And my topic's a lot like Jarrett's in the sense that like I want to talk about the issue, but I want to talk about something bigger than the issue. And that is with the Switch Joy-Con drift issue. And if you've been living under a rock, I'm just going to give you a quick recap of what's been going on. So, over the last week or so, a ton of stories have been surfacing about where people have been realizing that this stick drift they've been getting on their Nintendo Switch's Joy-Cons is not just them breaking their console. It is a widespread issue that many Switch owners have suffered through. And so there's been Reddit threads with a ton of different people commenting that they've experienced this. There's been articles on The Verge, Kotaku, Polygon of people on their staffs that have experienced these issues. And it all kind of came to a head when a law firm filed a class action lawsuit against Nintendo due to this design flaw and the fact that they were charging their customers to ship the consoles back in order to get them repaired. And so that's kind of where everything came to a head. Yesterday, it was reported that Nintendo had internally changed their policy with the Joy-Cons, that they were going to replace them for free, and that they were also going to refund anybody who had a proof of purchase, not a proof of purchase, who could verify with a ticket that they had paid to ship their console in for repairs. And so we can talk about this very, very briefly. If you guys are all Switch owners, have any of you guys experienced this issue with your Joy-Cons?
I actually have, and I tried to fix them, and it didn't work. And I just got a new set, so I'm very sad by this news that it just now said I could got them fixed for free. But I figure I can at least send it in now, and then I'll have two pairs of Joy-Cons that I could potentially use. So I mean, it's not the end of the world.
So how long after you got your console did it start?
It happened within I think it was earlier this year that I noticed it first kind of starting, and I'd had my Switch. I got it a few months after launch. So it'd been a while. It's not like I was not one of the day one people who's like, "Oh, this happened," and all that. I actually thought I was out of the clear for it for a while because didn't they come out and say that like not long after the Switch released and it became a problem, they like, "Oh, here's like a software update or something, firmware update that should fix it." So I got mine after. I got mine. That was like a month after launch, I feel like, or something pretty quick.
And that was a whole entire different Joy-Con issue. That was a connectivity issue with the left Joy-Con.
Yeah.
Where it would like randomly disconnect from the console. So these Joy-Cons have just been through the ringer as far as issues are concerned.
So yeah, I want to send mine off now to get it fixed, so then I can have the extra controllers.
Yeah.
I haven't faced this issue yet.
Yeah, I haven't either, luckily. So
it was very annoying trying to run my farm in Stardew Valley, and just every time I pull up the inventory, it would just immediately just cycle to the left continuously. Yeah. It was incredibly frustrating. It got to the point where I just used the Pro controller all the time, but then you can't play that in bed comfortably, like before trying to prop it up awkwardly. The handheld mode, prop it up awkwardly on your legs while you're trying to play and hold the Pro controller up.
It just didn't work.
Yeah, that's not what you bought it for.
Exactly. So now that I got the new set, I've been.
So what do you guys think of Nintendo's handling of this situation, from kind of letting it get to this point, class action lawsuit, and I still don't think they've released any kind of official public facing statement about this policy change for their customer service reps. This is all from like an internal source that was it Polygon had, or
I think it was Kotaku originally.
Kotaku did the original story. I can pull this up. Kotaku did it was a Vice story. That had the internal memo verbiage. But what do you guys kind of think about Nintendo's response from a customer service perspective, and then also in considering the Switch Lite's release here in the next couple months?
I think it's not a great look to be aware of the problem and then charge people to get their issue fixed. That's not a great look.
Yeah, no.
And it's also not a great look to then have someone file a lawsuit against you, considering how litigious Nintendo is when it comes to their own issues and their own platform. So I think there are many ways that this could have been handled better, definitely from a PR and marketing side of things, but even also from a customer service side. Like it's an issue that I'm not sure that Nintendo has specifically had to deal with before, just because of the nature of the console, that it's just a unique kind of console. And I'm sure there are many people who just kind of ditched their Joy-Cons and went to their Pro controller like you did, despite the fact that it is more inconvenient, and just didn't
Mhm.
bother. But like, you can't. It's pretty shitty to force people to pay up to get a problem fixed that shouldn't have been a problem in the first place.
Because you have to pay up which either way you go. You either
Yeah,
pay to get it
exactly.
fixed or you pay to get a new set. And a
Mhm.
new set's not cheap. So,
No.
so people are gonna like, well, I guess I'll pay, or be like me and be stubborn and just use the Pro controller. But then, but yeah, so I agree that forcing people to fix a known issue, pay to fix a known issue, like shouldn't be happening. Just,
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think, like, look, I'm glad they've come out with, not come out, I'm glad they've released this
Yeah, they haven't
internal
said
memo
anything
changing the policy and that it's gotten out to the public. But there's a couple issues that I still have with it, right? And the first thing is, like, they haven't stated that they've identified what the issue is in their production of these consoles that's causing the controllers to do this. And so, yeah, they may be able to get a console that's suffering from this issue, open it up and be able to fix it and send it back. But does that mean that any Switch I purchase from here on out may suffer from this issue? Does that mean that when you send it back to me fixed, that in 4 more months I may have the same exact issue and have to send it back again? Like, there's so much murkiness around what the actual issue is that if I was recommending the purchase of like if I was still working at GameStop, like I would feel obligated to let people know that, like, hey, this is an issue we've been seeing with this, and Nintendo hasn't really told us what it is that is causing it or if they have any kind of known fix. And so, and I also just I think that the reason they haven't said anything publicly is because of the lawsuit, and that any kind of public statement would maybe be like an admission of guilt that could be used against them. And so there's a corporate, CYA approach.
Self-preservation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Self-preservation. There's a kinder way to say it. Approach to it that just Nintendo's always been cagey with the way that they function internally, but I think when it's something that's impacting so wide of a consumer, so wide a base of your consumers, that, like, you owe it to the people who have spent their hard-earned dollars on this, your outrageously priced accessories, and your brand new games that never ever go on sale. You owe it to the people that spend that money to give them some kind of explanation as to why their consoles are suffering through this.
Oh yeah.
But I also think it makes the sell of the Switch Lite really difficult.
It complicates it for sure.
Because what is it that the Joy-Cons on the Nintendo Switch Lite don't do? Come off. So if your Joy-Con breaks, your entire console is broken. And Nintendo doesn't have the best track record with cloud saves. On Team Chat podcast this week, you guys talked to an Animal Crossing streamer about how that game isn't going to allow cloud saves. And did you guys say, like, what were some of the other games that don't? Because there's some, like, big games that don't allow you to save to the cloud.
Oh, what was she saying?
Splatoon, I think.
Splatoon, yeah, I think does that. Another one. Were they saying they weren't sure about Smash? I'm not totally sure on all of them either. But the how she said, like, your solution to be able to have, like, how Animal Crossing New Horizons won't offer cloud saves, but then you also have to even have multiple towns. You basically have to have multiple switches to run the game off of. And I was just like, that's ridiculous. Like,
yeah,
that's really crazy. And it's weird they're so stingy with those parts of it.
Yeah. And when you go to send a Switch back to get worked on, they always tell you, and this has been the way with Nintendo forever. Like, even when I was working at GameStop, if people had to send back, like, a Wii U or something, it was always, we can't guarantee you're going to have your data back when we send it back to you. And so you're not just asking people to send in their controllers, you're asking them to send in their whole console with the Switch Lite. And I think that greatly complicates trying to sell that system.
Right. I mean, if you're giving us the Nintendo Switch Online, which apparently that you say would give us the opportunity to have backups, it should work for everything. Like, at that point, if you're offering it as a service, I feel like you can't be selective, where it applies and where it doesn't, because of like what Fusion was saying on our last episode was like cheating concerns, basically, of like in Animal Crossing anyway. And to her point, she was like, "That's not what people who play Animal Crossing are usually about. So this seems weird that you would limit."
And it's
this
not a competitive game.
Exactly. It's just like we're just building towns. Who cares if we figure out a way to build them just a little bit faster? It's not like so yeah. That's weird that they want to be so hands-on selective as to which games will be able to back up and not. Because I mean, yeah, I'd be pissed if I gave sent in my Switch to save, and even a game that I had spent 8 hours in and lost all my data in it, as opposed to like say a game that I played 60 plus hours in. Like I can't even imagine how mad I'd be then. So so it's a very weird thing on their end. I don't quite understand.
Yeah. But I want to kind of scope out from this conversation and talk more about some of the reactions that I've seen from people in the Nintendo community to people who have raised this issue. And the fact that they are either, I've seen a lot of people who have either been dismissive and said like, you need to just take better care of your shit. To people who have just been downright nasty to individuals who've brought these issues up. And so I want to talk a little bit about corporate apologism in gaming, because I feel like we have this across a lot of different industries, right? You're either a Ford guy or a Chevy guy. You're either a degree. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I can't think. You're either a Mac or a PC guy, And but I think in gaming, for some reason, this corporate apologists are just rampant within it in a way that I don't think I really see in other industries to the magnitude that I see it. So I want to talk a little bit about what do we think causes that to be the case in gaming specifically, and what are ways. So we do something over here, Jerrett. We don't just like to bitch about things. When we have an issue, we like to propose some solutions. So
okay.
What do you think the industry could be doing better, and what do you think we as members of the gaming community could be doing better to stifle and get people to move away from from the corporate apologism? So,
I mean, honestly, what kind of pops into head about it is to not make it on a corporate side. It could not be as much of a us versus them, but I also know that that's like what business is. We need to do better than them to be able to be more successful and make more money for our shareholders and all that stuff. But I think even if not in that sense of just showing more signs of togetherness, like we're getting to the point where now where cross-platform play is becoming a thing now, where somebody I can play against somebody who's playing on their Switch and I'm on my PlayStation 4, with again certain games. But I think doing things like that, and how Microsoft and Nintendo especially, with getting Cuphead on the Switch, showing these signs of being able of like, hey, we can play nice with each other. Because I think what it's been and what brought up why people get these huge I can't think of the right word. It's escaping me right now, but basically just like not identity, I guess, behind which console or platform that they're playing, that they're playing on, because it's always been a thing of, well, I'm Microsoft, so I only play Xbox, or I'm Sony, so I only play PS4, and PS4 is just better. Get over it. Even when they are, still considered somewhat comparable. I just think once you get away from that of it being these three separate entities to being more willing to work together on certain things, I think we'll do a lot to get over this idea of just like, well, I like Xbox, and if you don't, well, fuck you. So, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. If we want to talk about why we think this is the way it is,
yeah, definitely.
We have to talk about brands.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what's happened here. What's happened is that the games industry has been driven by brands and corporations since its inception, because it's essentially a technology industry. Mm-hmm. Only recently have we started to think about it as a form of storytelling and a storytelling medium. But unlike film and television, which also are driven by corporations, but are also, most people align themselves with creators. And whether they're actors, directors, screenwriters, we know those names.
Yeah, you don't see people who are like we're CBS people. Fuck you,
Exactly.
ABC guys.
Exactly. Yeah, people are quick to turn on Netflix as soon as Friends or The Office isn't on there. Like
Yeah,
they're fans
right.
of they're fans of the products or the creations themselves. It's different in games because largely we aren't familiar with, outside of like Kojima, Ken Levine, and the individual studios themselves, we don't really know the people behind the games that we love. And I think that separation has led people to just align themselves with the brands and the corporations themselves. Presentations like E3 certainly don't help when they're all shepherded by the corporation itself and the brand itself. They've purposefully built up a brand of Xbox, a brand of Sony, a brand of Nintendo, and those things are super powerful. It's the reason why in the 80s people protested, not protested, but they reacted so intensely when New Coke came out. Like, people were Coke apologists.
Mhm.
People fucking loved Coke, and when New Coke came out, people are like, "What the fuck? What the fuck happened to our Coke? What is this?" And you don't see. There's certainly people out there who like wear the Coke branded T-shirts or whatever, but you don't really see that much anymore because people have learned to kind of be wary of the name behind it. They love the product, but they're wary of the name behind it. I don't know if that conversation is certainly starting to happen in games, and we're starting, like, publications like Kotaku and Polygon and Vice Games and even IGN to a certain extent are getting better at spotlighting the people that make these games possible. But I think a lot of that work is also being done by the corporations themselves, which doesn't help. It's like Microsoft and Sony have made a point to bring creators on stage, but it's still under the banner of a corporation.
Right.
And they're
And
generally
obviously,
exclusive products. Like,
yeah,
hey,
exactly.
we've got
Yeah.
Kojima working on this. Cory Barlog works for a Sony-owned studio.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're playing into it. The narrative, the console war narrative, is powerful enough to drive a lot of people wild. It's still a popular thing. So I think for me, I think that's still a major hurdle for the games industry to get over. And I think spotlighting outside of the corporate umbrella, spotlighting the actual talent behind games and getting gamers to recognize the people and the work that goes into it. This is like a highfalutin, like philosophical kind of thing. I understand it's not very concrete, but there's a fundamental shift in the way we understand games that needs to change, I think, for people to stop being constant corporate apologists, especially with something like Nintendo, which is a long history and people are attached to that brand so intensely. It's a powerful thing.
Yeah, and where these brands are so long-standing, they understand how to tap into the nostalgia that is so powerful.
And that's all Nintendo does.
And, I think you make an interesting distinction here between the way that entertainment is marketed versus the way that technology is marketed. Because most of technology is marketed in a very comparative way of, Sega does what Nintendo don't. Like, that's kind of where the console wars started, right? Like in this comparative marketing, in the Xbox One PS4 battle, like we saw Sony walk out on stage and be like, "We are now going to demonstrate how to trade in a game or how to share a game," and they just hand the case over. Like it's always been, we do this company doesn't do that, and your messaging is always placed next to somebody else, whereas in entertainment your story stands on its own. Like you don't see Disney putting out like Marvel trailers that are like, and look at how shitty this last Justice League movie was.
Right. DC has definitely tried to do that, though.
Well, to what success?
Yeah, no, it's true.
And so it is something that is pretty unique to technology, and now we have, because we see it in like phones as well, right? Like the iPhone versus Android phones, or I guess Samsung's really the one that's standing right now. But I agree, like there's a corporate responsibility to it, but them creating these pseudo wars, we joke about the console wars all the time on this show, and about how we thought they were over and that we could go home to our loved ones, but they're apparently just beginning. But I think that Xbox is seeing now how that marketing strategy has really impacted because now Microsoft has like a lot of anti-bullying initiatives for their online play and stuff like that, because they're realizing like we have cultivated a culture of toxicity by the way that we market our brands and the way that we talk about the competition. And so I think they're trying to take more of a top-down approach and saying we're trying to be more collaborative with our competitors, where we want to open up and like, look, there's a corporate end to those things as well with cross-play and cross saves and those sorts of things. But the message from the top is from Phil Spencer especially is like, we're all gamers, we're all in this together. Like whatever platform you play on, like Minecraft is kind of the olive branch, right? Because you can play it on everything with anybody, and it's really been representative of Xbox's approach. And I think that corporations need to begin realizing that like you reap what you sow, and that they have a responsibility to not let toxicity in their communities fester. And part of the thing that's creating that toxicity is the competition that they've bred and that they try to profit off of. And then for us as consumers, I think it starts with a recognition that we tend to be brand loyal to things. And like being able to look back and see a comment that you made where you come to the defenses of, like, I saw somebody who was like, all you crybabies can stop crying now, when that article came out about like Nintendo issuing refunds. It's like, we're babies for wanting our $300 product to work as we believed it was going to work. Like, just step back and have an honest conversation with yourself about why you feel this way about something. And then just us being able to have honest conversations about it. And I think we do a pretty good job on this show of not trying to compare. We talk about what Microsoft is doing with their future and how it plays into the gaming industry at large, but we rarely are like, we think that Microsoft's doing this way better than Sony's doing it. And, you know, I think just in the conversations we have with each other, even if we're not recording them, we need to talk about these like we do with entertainment, as these kind of standalone products that stand on their own merit.
Obviously within the context of a larger industry, but it's also important to recognize that a corporation and a brand, you can be loyal as you want to a corporation and a brand, but they're only loyal to you as long as you spend money on them. They don't really give a shit about you at all. And so understanding the distinction between the corporation and the IP or the product you're buying into is an important one. And the people behind that IP and product. I will always push understanding the creative process behind the things we love, because I think it's important to understanding and being able to talk about it more in a more educated manner. So yeah, I think like creating a mental division and kind of taking a step back and reflecting on that stuff is always important.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the Sony product you're standing behind is coming from a company who 10 years ago literally stood on stage and said, y'all motherfuckers want to be able to afford a PS3? Get another job. You know, like, you're right.
It's so true.
You were a walking dollar sign.
Yeah. I just like what we all said. I think plays like it's like what you grew up on and kind of stuff, or was what you had, and that really drives how much you're going to be loyal to something. And but at the end of the day, yeah, they all do the same thing. They just do it in a different way. It's just whichever way you like it better is the one you should go with.
Definitely.